Today at the office, I learned about TS-expect error, and I think this is much better than using TS-ignore in your TypeScript code. TS-expect error allows you to tell the compiler that the next line should throw an error. And in the case that it doesn't throw an error, then you're going to have an error. But let me show you why this is good. Now, TS-expect error was introduced in TypeScript 3.9, but let's look at this simple code. Now, I have this particular library, and let's say this is a library that we publish and we install. Now, this library has a couple of things, including our type definitions. We have this demo API response, and now we try to use this type from the library. We match this type to our API call. Here I have TS-ignore because I'm not having any code here in the API call, but let's assume that this API call should actually have a response that looks like this. Here we try to access the name, age, which is fine. We have the name and age here, but now we're trying to access the social media property on the contact. But obviously that does not exist here. We only have phone number and email. But it's very possible that I know for sure that social media is a property that would be on the contact object on the response of the API call. Maybe I was the one who changed the backend or the API, or maybe I know somebody who actually changed those things. There is that assurance that this will exist from the backend, but then the library is not updated yet for whatever reason, but there is a plan to update that library. Now, in the meantime, to pass the TypeScript compiler check, you might think of introducing TS-ignore. This will tell the compiler, ignore the error on this line. Now, this works fine. Obviously, you'd still want to do something like checking if REST contacts social media. You still want to check that before you actually do anything so you don't have runtime errors. But just to satisfy the TypeScript compiler, this is fine. But the problem with this is that when the library is actually updated and now you have social media, and then you have an updated version of the library, you install the updated version of the library, now you have social media, but then this TS-ignore is not doing anything anymore. In fact, the next person who comes to the code might look at this and think, why is this line ignored? REST contact social media, that looks fine. So now there is an actual problem where the next person might not understand the decisions you made here. Obviously, you can add some comments or do all of those things. But if you should just use TS-expect error, now it will expect the next line to actually throw a static error. Now, if I should remove social media string there, now we have this. So here we're telling the compiler, expect the next line to throw an error. Maybe there is something which should be fixed soon, or there are plans to fix it, but for now, you want to just satisfy the compiler, you have this. You can go as far as adding comments to say social media does not exist on the type yet. You can still add more context if you want, but yeah, you have this. Now, when the library is actually updated with the right types, we have social media string. Now you get an actual error that says unused TS-expect error because the next line does not throw an error. And so this is sort of a reminder to clean up your code. You no longer need this TS-expect error. The types are fixed now, so you can clean your code in whatever places you might be using the TS-expect error. If you had TS-ignore, you would not have that reminder, but with TS-expect error, you would always have that reminder to clean up your code. Now, this is a very simple example, but you might have other cases where you are sure that something exists, but then it doesn't match the types that you have yet. And maybe it's currently not part of your scope to update those types, or maybe it's a longer effort to update those types, but you need to deliver a particular feature quickly. Then maybe don't use TS-ignore, use TS-expect error, so that by the time that type is actually fixed, you'll be reminded to clean up your code.